Hello everybody, I am Zombie Maker 31 and I am here in Kerbal Space Program and I'm going to show you how to begin it in career mode. Of course, you don't want to try any of the other modes because, well, they're just too easy. So the first thing that you're going to start off with when creating your very first spacecraft is your command pod. The command pod is very useful as it holds your Kerbals, the people that are down here, except the Kerbal astronauts are going to be in here. So the command pod is very, very important, as this is the only way that you can launch and guide your missile or rocket. Anything else, it would just not work. Until you get further along in Kerbal Space Program, of course. Now, the first thing you're going to need is a rocket, because in the beginning stages, you will not have fuel tanks. That is something you just do not have in the beginning. In the beginning, however, you have an engine that's called the RT5 Flea Solid Fuel Booster. It holds 140 fuel, and it should get us somewhere. Now, as you can see, all these little icons are currently empty except for a few things like utility, which holds our MK16 parachute. This is very important, even more important than the command pod, because without the parachute, if you launch this thing, you will not get anything back. And in career mode, that is a big no-no, as money and reputation is big on this. So you want the parachute, no matter what. Another thing that you'll need is in the icon aerodynamics, and it's a basics fin. Now, this is usually used on planes. You could put it on a rocket, however, I don't do that. Now, once you're done with the basics, you're going to want to name your spacecraft. And being that this is the most simplest spacecraft you can do, I'm just going to call it simple. And then you're going to want to launch it. Now, another thing you want to do... Another thing you want to do is look right here. You see how there's that minus and plus? Well, you're going to want to press that plus and put that rocket on the 1. Because if you do, then the rocket and the parachute will launch at the same time. And that's something you don't want either, because you'll just fly around all crazy like. Now, to start off your rocket, you have to make sure you have a Kerbal. And usually the game automatically gives you Kerbals, but sometimes it won't. But in this case, we do have one. To start off the rocket, you could either press activate engine, or you can press spacebar. And now you blast off into space, and you'll just keep going and going and going until eventually you run out of fuel. If you look on the bottom left, you will see the rocket is out. Usually this bar is full, as in it's like a light green color, but it's currently empty. Now that our fuel is empty, you can do two things to pass the time. Either go on your phone for about 10 minutes and then eventually you will end up back on Earth. But of course you want to keep an eye on this rocket, because if you don't, well, it'll crash into the Earth instead of float gently because you did not activate the parachute. Or you could just simply press right now, spacebar, and you'll get a parachute. However, doing this early was a really bad idea, as you don't go higher and you can't get more science points. Science or research is very useful, as it can help you get more technology so you can go higher into space and then explore new planets like the moons, or if you want to be crazy and go into the sun. To get research, it's really simple. You can get a crew report, and I recommend keeping the experiment because transmitting it will usually have a negative drawback to it, as in you'll have much less research than you would have. Another thing you could do is do an EVA. However, in the beginning of the game you cannot do this, as it says down here, as you need to upgrade your astronaut complex. But once you do, you'll get an additional amount of research depending on how high you are. Now, we are slowly, although it is very, very quickly heading towards the ground at a very high speed, we are now slowly descending. And we're getting there. But in case your phone has broken or you are just plain bored, you can go to this little icon and increase the speed of the descent. However, I recommend you be careful, as it also increases the speed of the aircraft. And you're done. You landed safely and no Kerbal has died. You can go up here and do a recover the vessel. Now that you have done that, you will see that by recovering your rocket, you have gained 14 science, or research as I like to call it. And by having none of your parts blow up due to impact, you got some of your money back. And you still have Jebediah alive, and he's gained 1 experience. Yay! Experience is good as, well, depending on the type of astronaut you have. A pilot will be able to control the rocket better. An engineer will be able to, once it's doing an EVA, connect parts to the ship if you have a storage unit on the rocket. A scientist, however, there are parts in the game where you can do research out in space in the rocket. One of these is the mobile science lab. By having scientists in this lab, you can generate research which you can later transmit down to Kerbin, or Earth. The higher the XP that you have, as in the stars that are right here, means the more research will be generated. Now, I was talking about parts before as research, and by clicking on the research and development, this is what I mean. It's a tech tree of sorts, and in the beginning, you can't really get that much. However, as you go down the line, you'll eventually get to more advanced items that will help you go further into space. The first 2 items is basic rocketry and engineering 101. Both of these are useful in their own way. However, being that we have 14.5 research, this will be no problem for us. So we'll research both. By researching both, we have, by going back into the vehicle assembly or rocket assembly, we have now a fuel tank, some better engines, and let's see here, some structural items that will help you connect things, a coupling device so you can actually split off rockets so it's much lighter and therefore can go higher. Still have normal aerodynamic tail fins. Now we have communication devices as well, so we can transfer our research down to Earth. And this is what I was talking about, some research items, so a thermometer and mystery goo. By placing these on your rocket, you can increase the amount of research you get, which is very useful as you want to get as much research as possible so you can eventually go into the sun. Hopefully this was informative for you guys so you can start off your career in Kerbal Space Program.